I decided to punish myself by playing Wolfenstein on the hardest difficulty. Not only will this be a challenge on its own, but even worse, it'll be my first time ever touching a Wolfenstein game. Join me on my playthrough where every tiny decision that I make determines whether I live or die. Little did I know this challenge would be one of my most difficult challenges yet, and I had way more deaths than usual in my videos, so make sure to stay with me until the end to see how many times I died, and other fun statistics from the playthrough. Have you ever seen an image of this monstrosity floating around on the internet? Well, this is the game it's from. That's right, this game actively makes fun of you if you decide you want a more story-driven experience. So, me being my easily swayed by others' opinions or actions self, well, this is just an offer I can't refuse. We find ourselves controlling the character of Blazkowicz, who's a US Army Ranger captain on the way with his crew to raid a huge fortress on the coast of the Baltic Sea run by Wilhelm Death's Head Strauss. We don't even have time to set up before we're thrust into the action. One of our planes gets shot down and we need to cut off the fuel supply to a busted engine. So I get up and race. Hold on. There we go. I get up and race to the fuel line to clamp it, or whatever he said. We're losing altitude now, so I have to run to the back to jettison some of the cargo we're carrying so we can succeed at not dying within the first 30 seconds of the gameplay. All of this that we just did means nothing though, because the guy piloting the plane holding the rest of the troops dies, and we have to jump across to the wing of this other plane. We're pulled in and I get my first glimpse of how the game tells its story. The way this game conveys its story involving the player character is by as jarringly as possible ripping us from our bodies and showing us the scene as if it were a third-person movie. Then it just cuts back like nothing happened. Maybe I've just been spoiled by seamless games like Cyberpunk or Far Cry, but this is just... why? Nevertheless, we end up crashing anyway, but at least we're at our destination when we do. We swim underwater to avoid detection, destroy these robot dog things, and save our crew. Now when I say this game doesn't hold your hand, that's an understatement. In fact, I almost died to this dog attack thinking it was a cutscene when you actually have to mash left click to attack back before he mauls you. Thanks for letting me know how to live, game. But now that I know how this mechanic works, I never end up dying to it again for the rest of the game. This seems to be a recurring theme for the game, where you're forced into something and have no idea what to do until you die and have to do it over again. Though it's not my favorite thing when games do this, it's fine in and of itself. That is, unless you're trying to have a low death count. See where I'm going with this? But who cares, right? I just gotta get good, as they say. So we continue on taking out every enemy we encounter and getting a good feel for the combat. Oh my gosh, is that dual-wielding assault rifles? What were they thinking? This doesn't seem very possible at all. Can you guys believe this fictional game isn't totally realistic? With my brand new dual-wielding assault rifles, I proceed to run around using only one of them because I thought they both fired at once, when you actually have to press left and right click at the same time to fire both. Then, I get Yu-Gi-Oh! Obliterated by this guy, who I didn't even see. This, sadly, being the first death of the playthrough about 22 minutes into playing, but I guess it could be worse. I try again though and elect to take a more cautious approach, and it works wonders. At this point in my playthrough, I'm having a pretty good feeling about this challenge, and I'm really loving the fact that everyone seems to be dying if I can manage to land a headshot. It feels especially rewarding considering that the iron sights don't seem to work even in the slightest bit, and I have to hip fire all the time. About 10 minutes of gameplay later, we're about to enter the castle when the floor gives out beneath us. Oh, this reminds me of that Devil in Me game where the dude falls down from the trap door. Joke's on them though, we wanted to get inside the castle anyway. We find ourselves in some kind of lab, I guess. Fight the easiest boss we'll face in this game and are crushed to death by the walls. I'm just kidding, we were only slightly crushed to death, so now we're fine and on our stomachs in this room where Mr. Deadly Smile tells us to choose between Fergus or Wyatt for who to kill, and if we don't, he'll kill everyone. Now, I'm making this video after playing through the game, so I obviously know more about these two characters now than I did at the time of recording. But at this point in the game, I've only been with these two dudes for about 54 minutes, and in those 54 minutes, we've saved a plane, abandoned that plane, saved another plane, saved everyone on board, crashed that plane with everyone on board, taken a swim, got to a turret, found out there's robot dogs and destroyed them, been attacked by people, been attacked by normal dogs, fell 5 stories, had my face smashed in by a cinder block, been attacked by a massive robot dude, had this mechanical room squish me to death, all while trying to learn about this brand new game I've never played before. So I haven't exactly had time to develop feelings for either of these guys, so I randomly choose. Sorry, Wyatt. In a plot twist of the century, the evil villain lied and plans to kill us anyway. So we break his equipment and jump out the window, go, but not before a random piece of shrapnel lodges itself into my brain and sends our character into a vegetative state. Even though we're now paralyzed and unconscious, we have no trouble staying afloat in the water somehow, and are found and taken to the hospital, where they quickly find out we don't have life insurance and yeet us down a hill. Instead, we now find ourselves in an insane asylum where we're being taken care of by a woman named Anya for 14 years before just somehow kinda snapping out of it. Turns out, during those 14 years, we've lost the war, and now the entire world has been plunged into chaos. So we hop in the car and go wherever, which doesn't quite seem like a good game plan to me, but hey, whatever. So we end up going to Anya's parents' house and go all Bubba on a dude we just kinda kidnapped after he tells us where our allies are, and set off to save them. What follows is pretty much a sandbox section where you can take out the enemies at your own leisure, so I tried my hand at stealthing, since if you silent take down your enemies and don't get caught, it's the easiest way to get through really hard games. But, of course, I'm about as silent as a marching band and pretty much immediately get caught. Eventually, however, I do take them all out and return to the car to tell them it's safe. As I was mentioning earlier, this game is pretty much only fair once you've seen the enemy once. So, I get blindsided by this robot and die pretty much instantly, but on the second or third try, I managed to use cover to my advantage and take these things out. This time around, these enemies weren't too tough, but later on they become really annoying. Now that the dangers are all taken care of, we're able to continue safely, so I hop back in the trunk to stay hidden. And real quick, come on game, I know she wasn't in there. Did the developers get lazy or something? But anyway, about 4 seconds go by and we're on this train now to Berlin. I'm trying to bring coffee back to my brand new GF, but I'm intercepted by these two perverts to play a game. I won't sit here and force you to watch the game because it's kinda pointless. All they did was tell me to choose a card or die. It was all a lie though, so all you need to know is that I had a terrible time watching these two be all with each other. 4 more seconds go by, and now we're at the destination. The new objective is to get on top of that transport vehicle, so they'll take us right into the prison. So we do a bunch of sneaking around stealthy stuff again. I love these ragdoll animations. And somehow don't get caught belly flopping onto the top of this vehicle. About 10 minutes of sneaking... about 10 minutes of failing to sneak later, we encounter this robot dog thing again, but we're up high, so it shouldn't be able to get... Really? I died because I moved too fast? Alright, let's try that again. This time I'll make sure I'm only kinda fast, I guess. There we go. Finally, we make it to all of our pals and free them from their imprisonment, only for us to get ambushed at the last moment. I climb through the vents to get behind them, and now my teammate's survival is counting on me. Despite our efforts, our main man Fergie is the only one left out of all of them, really living up to his main man status. So he and I shoot our way out of the prison, using any and all distractions we can as we go. Although, I must say, Fergie here is the worst teammate ever. When he's not shooting me, he actually seems to be siding with the enemy. That, mixed with the fact these horrible enemies were introduced to us, led to me dying at least 6 times here. Despite my teammate actively working against me, we do a sick jump in our brand new car to escape the prison and meet up with Anya, who takes us to the resistance hideout in the heart of Berlin. We quickly move on with the next plan to get a helicopter, where this guy kinda just yeets himself into this building and dies for pretty much no reason, since all the enemies that will give me trouble are still alive. But I make do with a bad situation, and after dying in some more questionable ways, we get inside. I then proceed for what ends up being almost an hour just fighting the normal ads of the game until I get to our first real boss fight. Even though I still died to it, there's not a whole lot to this fight, honestly. I hid behind this giant pillar in the middle of the room, alternating sides as I shot, and reloaded when necessary when the weapon ran out of energy. Eventually, with enough persistence, he fell and it was time to get out of here. Now that that's taken care of, our next course of action is to break a dude named Set Roth out of jail, since he's smart and might have some inventions we can use. When asking around the table for any volunteers, everyone just sits there and is like, well, I ain't the player, so... And we're sent on our way. So we break in, and in about 30 seconds we find this guy. I'm not joking, this game is really flying by in terms of pacing. Turns out, even with the massive amount of roaming security, Set has created this magical device that can hack into all the walking robot things at a moment's notice, and all it needs is a battery. So of course, we set out to go get one, but first we need to disable the security systems, and coincidentally take out a dude named The Knife, which is such a silly name by the way, sounding like a 12-year-old's Xbox gamer tag. Now, all Set needs is the battery, so we infiltrate the base, take everyone out, and grab the battery only to be swiftly electrocuted, pass out, and be found by the enemy. There we are now, tied to posts and are about to be executed if we don't do something. So I throw the battery to set, and he quickly uses his new device to save us. I don't know about you guys, but I have this thing where I imagine what it'd be like if I were in this scenario, and in this particular one, I would be like super dead. I would either barely have any velocity behind that throw and it'd land about 2 feet away, or I'd overdo it and it'd go flinging off the side of that cliff. But like I said, he uses it to save us. The dudes in the back have about as good a time as I do when taking out the robot, so that's reassuring to see. Ugh, get off me. Now that we have control over this giant mech thing, we use it to escape. And don't you worry guys, I definitely died here too. Even with this mech, you have to be really careful and prioritize your targets, otherwise the enemy will still overpower you. Now that we got the prisoners out of there, there's no time for rest and we're thrown directly into the next planning phase. I mean seriously, we're transitioned from being at the prison's front doorstep to the planning room. They said, screw the world building, there's no explosions happening there. The closest thing we really get to character building of any form for any character other than ourselves is with Tekla here. And I had to look up her name to remember it, so that just goes to show how little of an impression she made on me.
The brain is a biological computational device running an electrochemical process. Your consciousness is an emergent property of that process. Blank faces like you were in the past, and you have a sensation of riding along this continuous brain from the previous, now dead inhabitants. Yes, like talking to a child.
What? Moving on, I guess. Our next objective is to get a boat that is capable of going deep underwater, so that we can launch a surprise attack or something. So we set out to steal some technology that will help us accomplish that, and I get hung up on this part right here. Essentially, I click a button to unlock the doors for our escape, and we have a wave of enemies come to try and wipe us out. These enemies right here for this section were the worst. I'm not exaggerating when I say that they took around 20 shots from my laser rifle to take out. There were 3 of them, plus a mixture of those shotgun dudes and normal enemies from earlier. This section is responsible for easily another 6 or 7 deaths. Now that we're finally on the ship that we are about to hijack, let me formally introduce to you some of the worst enemies in the game. These bastards right here are responsible for so many deaths in this playthrough. They have this bouncing type of ammo, and even if it hits you on the second bounce or so, it still does a crap ton of damage. Add that onto the fact that there's about 20 pellets per shot, and they're infinite ammo, and the fact that they don't die unless you land 15 headshots. They just suck, okay? Eventually though, we get past them with some kind of magic. No, I really have no idea how they died so easily here. And it's time to go down and get some alien stuff, including this Iron Man looking suit and this magical ball looking thing. I honestly have no idea why these things are in the game. They made no sense. Can I just say real quick, why is it that he gets the Iron Man alien suit? We're the ones always being sent on missions and being put in harm's way, and he gets the suit because, nuh-uh, mine. I'm calling shenanigans. Now that we have control over a giant submersible with a nuclear cannon on it, it's time to, and I'm not joking with you, go to the moon. That's right, as if this game weren't crazy enough, we're going into outer space and to the moon to get some nuclear launch codes. This game is so absurd. But first we need to get our disguise, and I mean apparently nothing's going to get in our way of us getting it, so casually causing mass destruction and mayhem, we fight our way to the train car to steal the disguise of the dude we just Yu-Gi-Oh! Obliterated. Sadly and disappointingly, this moon level, other than this tiny jumping sequence, is pretty much just a reskin of every other area of the game. It would have been really cool to jump around with low gravity, shooting enemies, but I guess that kind of technology was before this game's time. 2014? Okay, there's no excuse. What happened? After a lot of fighting to get into the lunar base, we print off the decryption keys and now it's time to fight our way out of it. Funnily enough, other than these long-range sections, I found that if I stopped dual-wielding these guns for even a moment, I wouldn't have enough uptime to survive against these enemies. For some reason, there's also a problem with the game's depth of field. I was totally unable to see enemies at all past a certain distance at times. There's not even a setting in the options to change this, so I'm not sure what that was about. As we're about to escape back to Earth, a couple more of these giant dudes come out, but I found that if you're clever with your aiming, you can actually get a really crazy head glitch on these enemies, and they almost can't do a thing to stop you. So this was actually one of the easiest fights I've had in a long time while playing this game. Now that we're done with the moon, we hijack this guy's ride back to Earth and come crashing down, landing on this bridge. By some means beyond my comprehension, we're somehow unscathed and are more than able to continue fighting, even though we landed like this. The ship is about to fall, so we're forced to jump for it, barely grabbing hold of this rope before Tarzaning into this window, going about the speed of light. This obviously makes a ton of noise, and now everyone in this room knows where we are. There's nowhere for us to run, there's nowhere for us to hide. It's fight or die. And let me just go ahead and throw this out there. I died to this part a lot. I hardly had any ammo, and the ammo I did have I had to waste on all the small fry, all while one of these bastards from earlier with the bouncing shotgun bullets shoots me from around a corner. All in all, I probably died at this section around 10 times. Once I beat it though, I walked out from behind the wall like some kind of scared animal. Like I mentioned earlier, the hardest portions of this game, for whatever reason for me, were the parts where I was facing your average dudes. Not even during a boss fight. So I make my way down the rest of the building thing until we make it down to the ground level and have to fight a London Monitor. And this thing is massive. My only deaths in this fight were from learning it, honestly. The first one I thought I was safe behind a dumpster, and the second one I simply couldn't get to cover in time. But on the third try, even though I had no idea what to do, my tiny brain finally pieced together what was supposed to happen, and I got it right. Essentially, you use these sewers for cover, and if you come to this one in particular, there's a spot where you can endlessly fire and recharge your weapon. Since this recharger is here, your cover never gets destroyed, unlike the other sewers that you can hide under in this little arena. Originally, I thought you had to fire at the thing underneath, but you actually had to fire at these missile silos until they're all gone. Then you can hit the thing underneath. Once I figured this out, it was pretty much a cakewalk with my little spot. Turns out at the very end of that boss fight, as we're reeling, our secret innermost sanctum for the resistance is being raided by that pervert with no face from earlier. So we gotta go save our friends. Remember that depth of field issue I mentioned earlier? Well, here's another instance where it really comes into play. I can hardly see the enemies to shoot at them here, let alone survive their rubber rebound homing shotgun shells. But even with this issue, they only kill me a bunch of times before I prevail. Turns out though, we were too late, and Engel captured Anya and Set, and now we gotta go get them back.
On this day, I am glad to have found my friend.
Oh no, Tesla? Tekla? I'm sorry, I really can't remember. Now filled with rage after having just lost my best friend, Tolka, I'm driven with renewed vigor to save Anya and Set and friends. The game, however, has other plans for me, as it just loves putting me in precarious situations with little to no health, or armor, or ammo. Eventually, though, I figure out that these guys are weak to direct missile hits, however, and with some careful camping, I take them out and we continue. Oh hey look, a really long tunnel. Totally nothing bad will happen when Luckily for us though, Iron Man himself comes to save us. We're not out of the woods yet, however, because she runs away with the suit just as fast as she came, and now we have a robot dog to take care of. I kinda just kited around this pipe until I kill him though, so he only killed me once. Oh, by the way, remember the dogs we took out in the beginning of the game? You know, the ones that took like 3 shots to beat? Man, what happened to those good times? Anyway, 3 months pass by, apparently, and it's time to go back to Death's Head's house to get our crew back. We use that same alien ball thing to pretty much annihilate the entire base, and it allows us easy entry. I fight through the base now with relative ease, until I got to this part. It only took me about 40 minutes to beat, but it felt like so much longer. This was definitely the area that provided me the most deaths in the playthrough, as I repeatedly just got roasted by these shotgunners, robots, missilers, brutes, and normal enemies. If I took any of them on face to face, it was pretty much an instant death. So I had to jiggle peek around corners, shoot rockets, and headshot these shotgun guys with them. Then I found out that you have a damage resistance when using a turret, so I hopped on that thing and it seemed to be the key to my succeeding, even if it took me about 5 to 7 more tries to do so. In total, I'd say this area alone gave me about 20 plus deaths. It was brutal. With a sigh of relief, I make my way down the hall, ready to overcome the next challenge, and I didn't have to wait long. Come on. Yep, it's pervert number 2, back at it again. This time, he wants to get revenge for his woman since we kinda ripped half her face off, and he live streams it to her as it happens. Unfortunately for him, we have plot armor, and even after having just been stabbed in the heart, we're just fine and proceed to brutally execute him in front of her. I am so sorry, that was downright rude of me. The drugs that he injected us with are affecting us pretty bad at this point, but we managed to take the elevator down and find Anya and the others. Yep, good to see you too. Gonna need a minute. Shortly afterward, we get on the elevator and wowee, who'da thunk it, we get separated once again. You know, I'm just saying, but at this point I'd be like, guys, I'm going first, with everything that's happened to us so far. But anyway, we're separated once again. It's now time for the final showdown with Death's Head. Well, almost anyway. First, it turns out he took Wyatt's brain and jammed it into this robot, and is now forcing his consciousness to fight for him. So that's easily done. Then it's time for the final showdown. This fight was honestly not terrible once I got used to what was happening. Basically, when you break his shield, he'll summon lightning like Thor himself to regenerate it from the blimps above us. I used my laser gun to break his shield and used the tiny amount of time it provided while he recharged to explore the map. Even with that strategy though, it took me a long time to find these cannons hidden way back here. I used the cannons to destroy the blimps, and when he went to recharge this time, he basically just exploded himself. Now for the real challenge of the fight. Death's Head and I duke it out on this below level of the facility, all while the arena is slowly crumbling around us. You're forced to dodge fire as well as bullets, rockets, and shockwave attacks. I'll admit that I was stuck on this for a long time. It seemed no matter what I threw at this guy, no matter how many bullets I put into him, he was just fine. Add on to that the insane issue with the depth of field, and this guy is broken. I didn't even know where I was being shot from at times. Eventually, however, I found my way around the map and learned it well enough to come up with an attack plan. Even if it wasn't a great one, it still was good enough to barely allow for me to survive just long enough to take him down. Pretty much all I did was run around the rectangular arena avoiding him, picking up all missiles that I could find and unloading into him from far away. Once he was down, I actually wondered how everyone else fared against him, so I looked it up and found a strategy that someone else used. Let me just show you how that went. Excuse me? What? Yeah, something is definitely broken about this game in some form. That was unbelievably easy in comparison to what I just went through to get it done on my own terms. But anyway, it's finally time to take this guy down. For Wyatt and all that. But just as we do so and deliver his final blows, he pulls a grenade out of his back pocket and... so you're telling me we can survive all that we had to go through up until this point, but a prison wallet grenade is enough to kill us? Alright, let me show you how this should have played out. Despite the grenade going off directly next to my head, we're totally fine other than like a cut here and there. But we know we won't be able to escape, so we essentially allow the airstrike while we're still inside and, well, that's the end of the game. So I must say this game was not amazing. It definitely had its moments, like in the beginning where you jump to the other plane. I thought that was cool. Maybe I'm just spoiled by newer games these days, but it felt like so much was missing. Half the time I was struggling to keep up with what was even going on, and just shooting stuff when the game told me to. That being said though, the game actually looks really good, and at least in the beginning, had a really nice feel to the shooting. It felt really nice taking out the enemies so easily in the beginning, but around the end where one guy could take 3 headshots before falling, I felt it started to lose its edge. While I say this though, I'm not bashing the game. There's a lot of people out there who think this game is a masterpiece, and while I might not think it's my favorite game, I'm still glad I played through it for the challenge, even if I think it might have taken some years off my life.